Have you ever heard a voice so powerful it feels like it could guide you through life itself? A voice that could narrate the universe or whisper a prayer in the darkest night? That's Morgan Freeman. Even if you didn't grow up watching him, you know that voice. But behind that soothing calm, behind the steady presence that has made millions feel safe, is a lifetime of quiet battles and a breaking story that has left fans around the world holding their breath. And just moments ago, heartbreaking news about the man we thought was unshakable has surfaced. We'll get there. But first, to understand the weight of this news, you have to know the journey that shaped him. The voice of a generation. Morgan was born in Memphis, Tennessee in 1937, long before Hollywood lights ever imagined him. His childhood wasn't the stuff of movie magic. Poverty wasn't just a word, it was his daily reality. His parents struggled to keep the family afloat, moving frequently as they searched for work. Imagine being a young boy with dreams larger than the Mississippi sky, but living in a world where those dreams felt almost illegal. Morgan grew up wearing second-hand clothes and second-guessed hopes, but inside him was a spark, quiet, stubborn, impossible to snuff out. He found escape in the small things, a school play, a scrap of dialogue, the magic of becoming someone else for just a few minutes. Acting wasn't glamorous. It was survival. When most kids his age were worrying about baseball scores, Morgan was memorizing lines and perfecting expressions. By high school, teachers already whispered that there was something different about this boy who spoke like he carried the weight of centuries in his voice. But life didn't roll out a red carpet. After graduation, the young dreamer joined the Air Force, trading scripts for fighter jets. He thought maybe the sky was his destiny. Yet even as he trained, a restlessness gnawed at him. Flying planes was thrilling, but it wasn't him. The roar of engines couldn't compete with the quiet power of words. After years of service, he made a decision that shocked those around him. He walked away. He left the safety of a military career to chase something invisible, something fragile, acting. Those early years in Hollywood were brutal. Imagine standing in endless casting lines, only to be told, "You're too old, too black," or simply, "Not what we're looking for." He worked odd jobs, dancer, clerk, even a transcript typist, anything to survive. There were days he couldn't afford rent, nights when dinner was nothing more than a stale sandwich. Friends told him to quit, to be practical. But Morgan's heart refused to surrender. He once said, "The best way to guarantee failure is to quit." That mantra carried him through rejection after rejection. His first real break came not in blockbuster films, but on children's television. Remember The Electric Company? In the early 1970s, Morgan appeared as Easy Reader, teaching kids the joy of words. It wasn't glamorous, but it was a start, a foot in the door that Hollywood had tried to slam shut. From there, small stage roles led to supporting parts in films. He was already in his 40s, an age when most actors are either stars or forgotten. But Morgan was just getting started. Then came the role that changed everything, Street Smart in 1987. Playing a charismatic pimp named Fast Black, Morgan delivered a performance so electrifying it earned him his first Oscar nomination. Suddenly, the man who'd spent decades in the shadows was impossible to ignore. Hollywood finally saw what audiences had sensed all along. Here was a talent carved from granite, refined by years of quiet struggle. Roles in Driving Miss Daisy, Glory, and Lean on Me followed, each one revealing new layers of his incredible depth. Through it all, Morgan never let fame rewrite his character. While other stars flaunted wealth, he stayed grounded. often returning to Mississippi where he'd bought a ranch. He once said he liked the quiet there, the open fields, the stillness that reminded him of simpler times. To the public, he became a symbol of wisdom and dignity, the voice of reason in a chaotic world. People began to believe he was untouchable, a rock immune to the storms that swallow others. But here's where the story takes a turn. Because behind the commanding voice and measured smile were struggles few ever saw. Morgan carried private heartbreaks, family tragedies, health scares, personal losses, like invisible scars. And now, a fresh piece of news has shaken those who love him most. Something happened just minutes ago, something that forces us to remember that even legends are human. The details are unfolding, and the truth is heavier than anyone expected. Before we face the heartbreaking update, remember the boy from Memphis, the Air Force dreamer, the struggling actor who refused to quit. Remember the journey, because it makes what's happening right now all the more devastating. And trust me, you'll want to hear what comes next. Hidden personal tragedies and health challenges. Oh no! If you think Morgan Freeman's deep, commanding voice and wise, fatherly presence meant his life was free of pain, you're about to be shocked. Behind that calm smile lies a story of heartbreaking loss, unimaginable trials, and a resilience that almost defies belief. Have you ever looked at someone who seems untouchable, so strong, so unshakable, and wondered what storms they've survived? Morgan Freeman is one of those rare souls whose greatest battles were fought far away from the cameras. Let's start with one of the most devastating chapters of his life. In 2015, tragedy struck in a way no parent should ever face. Morgan's granddaughter, Adina Hines, a young woman he loved like his own daughter, was brutally murdered in New York City. The loss was not just shocking, it was shattering. Morgan described her as a shining light in his life, someone full of promise and beauty. Can you imagine the weight of that grief? The man we've all seen narrating the wonders of the universe was suddenly faced with a darkness beyond words. Friends and colleagues said they had never seen him so broken. And yet, in interviews, he somehow found the strength to speak of forgiveness, saying that anger only keeps the pain alive. That's the kind of quiet wisdom that defines Morgan Freeman. But make no mistake, it came at a soul-crushing cost. And this wasn't the only heartbreak he endured. His personal life has been marked by complicated relationships and painful endings. Morgan married twice. First to Jeanette Adair Bradshaw in 1967, a marriage that lasted over a decade, and later to Myrna Colley Lee in 1984. Both relationships ended in divorce, leaving behind a trail of personal regrets and emotional scars. He has admitted that the demands of his career and his own restless spirit often pulled him away from the stability he longed for. Isn't it strange how the people who bring so much comfort to the world often struggle to find it for themselves? Then came the night that nearly ended everything. In 2008, Morgan survived a terrifying car accident in Mississippi. His vehicle flipped multiple times, leaving him with a shattered left hand and arm. Doctors worked for hours to repair the damage, but the injuries left him with chronic nerve pain, a condition known as fibromyalgia. Even now, years later, he battles constant discomfort. Have you ever tried to hide pain from the world, pretending everything is fine when inside every movement feels like fire? That's Morgan Freeman's daily reality. On screen, he remains poised and commanding, but off-camera, he quietly endures a body that betrays him. And yet, as if physical pain and personal loss weren't enough, Morgan has also faced the relentless glare of public controversy. In 2018, allegations of inappropriate behavior emerged, shaking his carefully crafted image. While Freeman denied any wrongdoing, and many of the claims were later questioned, the ordeal was deeply painful. Imagine having decades of work and respect suddenly clouded by whispers and headlines. For a man who had spent a lifetime building a legacy of dignity and grace, the experience was crushing. Through it all, Morgan Freeman's faith in storytelling has been his lifeline. He often speaks about the healing power of forgiveness and the importance of continuing forward, no matter how heavy the burden. He once said, "The best way to guarantee a loss is to quit." That single line reveals so much about him. This is a man who refuses to be defined by tragedy, even when it comes knocking again and again. It's easy to look at Morgan Freeman, the Oscar-winning actor, the voice of God in countless films, the eternal narrator of hope, and forget that he's human. But these hidden struggles, the heartbreaks he carries behind that steady gaze, remind us that strength isn't the absence of suffering. True strength is the ability to keep moving, to keep speaking truth, and to keep sharing light even when your own world feels unbearably dark. And here's the most astonishing part. Despite all these hardships, loss, pain, public scrutiny, Morgan Freeman continues to work, to inspire, and to smile. Isn't that incredible? He shows us that even in the face of tragedy, life still offers purpose. In a way, Morgan's story isn't just about surviving. It's about transforming pain into wisdom, and wisdom into something the entire world can share. As we look at Morgan Freeman today, it's impossible not to feel a mix of awe and sorrow. Awe for the incredible man he is, and sorrow for the quiet battles he's fought. But maybe that's what makes him so beloved. Because when he speaks, when he tells a story, we can hear the weight of everything he's endured. And somehow, it makes us believe that we can endure too. Today's heartbreaking update. Have you ever watched someone you admire, someone whose voice alone can calm a storm, and suddenly realize they're human, fragile, and quietly fighting battles you never imagined? That's where we find Morgan Freeman today. At 87, the man whose deep, commanding voice once seemed eternal now faces a chapter of life that even Hollywood couldn't script. Fans who grew up hearing him narrate hope itself are now whispering their own fears. Is the great Morgan Freeman okay? The heartbreaking truth is that time, relentless and undefeated, has begun to leave its mark. In recent months, those closest to Freeman have spoken in hushed tones about his ongoing struggles with chronic pain. His left hand, still partially paralyzed from a near-fatal car accident years ago, continues to trouble him. Simple tasks like buttoning a shirt or holding a script require patience and grit most of us can hardly imagine. And though he rarely admits it, age has also brought a deep fatigue, the kind that seeps into the bones no matter how strong the spirit. Friends say he remains as private as ever, but small glimpses have emerged. A canceled public appearance here, a shorter speech there. Even his legendary golf outings, once his peaceful escape, are fewer and farther between. Those who know him well describe a quiet acceptance, not of defeat, but of a reality he cannot narrate away. He hates the idea of being pitied, one longtime friend shared. He'd rather people remember his work than his pain. But the physical challenges aren't the only weight on Freeman's heart. Behind his warm smile lies a lifetime of personal loss. He still carries the grief of losing his granddaughter, Adina Hines, in a tragedy so shocking it left him shattered. Friends recall how he spoke of her with a grandfather's pride, her laughter, her bright eyes, and how her death left an unhealed wound. Even now, years later, Those close to him say her absence lingers in every quiet evening. It's a sorrow he doesn't share publicly, but it lives in the soft sadness of his eyes when he speaks of family. And yet, there is resilience, an almost mystical strength that seems uniquely Freeman. Despite the pain, he continues to work when he can, choosing projects that matter. He lends his voice to causes close to his heart, from racial justice to environmental protection. It's as if he knows the world still needs his calm, measured wisdom, even as his body asks him to slow down. "I have stories left to tell," he once said in a recent interview, his voice steady but tinged with vulnerability. "But I also have a life to live, quietly." In a world obsessed with youth and constant motion, Morgan Freeman's current chapter feels both heartbreaking and inspiring. Yes, he is aging. Yes, he faces daily battles most of us will never see. But he does so with the same quiet dignity that made him a legend. He isn't clinging to fame or fighting the inevitable. Instead, he's teaching us, without ever saying it, that aging is not an ending, but a truth we must all one day embrace. And perhaps that's why this update feels so heavy. We've always looked to Morgan Freeman as a steady presence, a voice of reason in chaotic times. To see him vulnerable is to be reminded of our own mortality. It's why fans around the world are flooding social media with love, sharing memories of the first time his voice gave them hope, the first film that made them believe in second chances. Messages pour in. "Stay strong, Morgan. You've given us so much. Now let us give you our prayers." So where does this leave us? And him? Freeman spends much of his time now at his beloved Mississippi ranch, surrounded by nature and the quiet he craves. Those close to him say he enjoys long drives on the property, watching the sunset, listening to the symphony of crickets and wind. It's not the glamorous Hollywood life people might imagine, but it's real, it's peaceful, and in that peace, he finds comfort. As we reflect on his extraordinary life, there's a lesson we can all take from Morgan Freeman's journey. Greatness isn't measured by how loudly you live, but by how gracefully you endure. He has given the world decades of unforgettable performances, wisdom, and compassion. Now, he asks for nothing more than to live the rest of his days surrounded by love and quiet dignity. And maybe that's the final script he wanted all along. A life that speaks not through applause, but through peace. So tonight, as we think of Morgan Freeman, the man, the legend, the voice, let's send him the love he gave to us for so many years. Because if there's one thing this heartbreaking update teaches us, it's this. Heroes may grow older, but their light never fades. Hold on to that thought, because somewhere in Mississippi, under a fading golden sunset, Morgan Freeman is still narrating life, softly, beautifully, and entirely his own way.